For my Ash Survival solo run, I went with a Bladestorm spam build that relies on getting Arcane Trickery procs during casts so you can be invisible between casts, which enables you to safely finish off all priority targets that can or should not be attacked with Bladestorm, like Nullifiers or Ancients, and for that I bring a Covered Lethality Dagger and my Waco Hack. The Ash build I'm using relies completely on the Cenoric focus tree. With 4 energy per second from the Energy Overflow talent, I can get at least 1 Bladestorm off every 12.5 seconds, or even more if I pick up an Energy Orb. You can pick up Void Pulse Mastery if you want to activate the Energy Overflow a bit faster, but for the most part this isn't really necessary, since 1 activation is enough to let it run for the whole mission and it even lasts through death, so not really needed. A lot of players have suggested using the Naramon focus tree instead, but this doesn't really do much for this build. We have already 2 sources for invisibility, and we don't really use melee, so the crit chance doesn't do much. The energy rack from Cenoric is by far the most powerful. Another core part of this build are the 2 Arcane Trickeries. They both have a 10% chance to make you invisible on a finisher. This applies to both a finisher done by your melee weapon and the finishers done during Bladestorm. Both 10% chances are independent of each other. That means you have a total chance of 19% to go invisible on every finisher, which equals to a damn high chance of going invisible during the many finishers of a Bladestorm cast. The Ash build itself is pretty straightforward. Steel Charge is by far the best aura. Even though we do not use melee, the 60% melee damage also applied to Bladestorm, and it's multiplicative with everything else, so 60% more Bladestorm damage is exactly what we need. For optimal Bladestorm damage we also need a lot of power strength. It's important that even though duration is not the main focus of this build, it also shouldn't be too low, so I choose Blind Rage over Transient Fortitude and add an Intensify. Now, even the Cenoric, an ultimate spamming build will run into efficiency problems, especially if you use Blind Rage, so both maxed efficiency mods are kind of mandatory. But even then, a max Blind Rage can make you run into energy problems, so I only take a rank 7 one. This results in 50 energy cost per Bladestorm, which is a pretty reasonable spot. For added range, Stretch is more than enough. For once, Bladestorm already has 25 meter space and a target limit of 18, and it also cannot attack enemies in other rooms. But it's still useful to pick up all targets in the current room with 1 cast, and Stretch ensures exactly that. Next up, duration. It's important to have at least a usable duration on your smoke screen in case Arcane Trickery fails, which it does fairly often. And then you have a backup plan. By adding primed continuity to the build, the duration on smokescreen, which is currently at 40%, more than doubles. And it also enables the use of Rising Storm. Rising Storm is an ability augment that gives 3 additional seconds to the duration of the melee combo counter generated by Bladestorm that scales with power duration. This is useful because the combo multiplier works also on Bladestorm. And with this augment you have a much higher chance to carry over the combo counter into the next Bladestorm cast. And yes, the combo counter also works if you don't have your melee weapon equipped. Even though the combo counter will not be displayed, it still counts the hits you do with your melee weapon or with Bladestorm, and it also applies the combo multiplier to them both. So using this augment can really pay off, as a Bladestorm with a stacked up combo counter can result in pretty big hits. Now we have 1 last slot left for a survival mod, and here I go with Vitality, since it gives you the most effective HP out of all other choices, and thus the best chance to survive at least 1 hit in high level, which is all we really need. And thanks to the Justice procs from the Waco hack, we get free health refills from time to time. For the Axilus mod, I simply go with Power Drift for a little more power strength on Bladestorm. This doesn't do all that much though, so if you really favor a different Axilus mod, you can pretty much take here whatever you want. Please keep in mind that the efficiency of this build is tailored to having energy overflow up and running at all times. So if you want to bring this build to a short mission or simply don't have the Cenoric tree yet, you can switch out Blind Rage for a Transient Fortitude and change your Fleeting Expertise to a rank 4 one. This will result in max efficiency and thus make the build usable without Zenric. On the Waker hack, I go with a standard crit build using Corrosive and Fire. Corrosive is perfect versus Ancients, which are the majority of targets you will use it on. Normally I would prefer Cold over Fire, because it's much better versus Nullifiers and alloy targets. But since Blaze is too good of a mod to pass up, you're pretty much stuck with Fire anyway. As you can see, I'm also using a dual stat mod here, but that's only because I'm missing a farmer. Corrosive procs aren't really needed on this build, so feel free to use a pure elemental mod instead. If you don't have a primed Ravage, the normal hack with its Syndicate mod works really good as well. Both have the Justice proc that opens up enemies to finishes. Together with your Covered Lethality dagger, simply walk up to an enemy after a proc and you can instantly kill him. Granted, you can do just the same by using Teleport, but this saves a bit of energy, which is nice. On the dagger, the only important mods are Covered Lethality to make your finishers kill in one hit and Fury to speed up your finisher animations. Everything else doesn't matter since I'm not using the dagger for melee combat. The playstyle of this build isn't really complicated. You use Bladestorm whenever there are enough targets in range or Trickery is about to run out. But be careful. Before Bladestorm, all Ancients inside should be killed with your gun. Not only does the healing aura of the Ancients greatly reduce your Bladestorm damage, but each hit on protected enemies also heal the Ancient. Additionally, the Ancient also soaks up all bleed procs, which is the reason why the Ancient eventually still dies. But this keeps you locked into Bladestorm for a long time, while you're not really doing much. And if it happens too often, life support will eventually run out. Nullifiers can safely be shot inside their bubbles as long as you're under the effect of Arcane Trickery. The bubble does not remove it. Even though these guys are inherently squishy, they are very resistant against the corrosive fire damage of your primary weapon, and if the game goes on for too long, even they can get pretty beefy. So you may want to consider bringing a secondary weapon, for example with Magnetic Toxin, to deal with them faster. Finally, heavy gunners and bombards, especially Eximus types, can get really huge health pools later in the game, and they suck up a lot of Bladestorm hits because of this. This is what the CV dagger is for. You use Teleport and a melee finisher on them to take them out instantly. This will greatly increase the killing efficiency of your Bladestorm. It should also be noted that you can speed up your Bladestorm animation a bit by sliding directly before the cast. This is useful since freshly spawned Ancients may enter the room and your Bladestorm range, shielding your targets with the aura and thus locking you into the Bladestorm animation as previously mentioned. Whenever Trickery didn't proc, you simply use Smokescreen and prepare for the next cast, and that's pretty much everything you need to know. Well, apart from, being red black, so you can be